So maybe right off the bat, I want to say that the Videoism thing about explaining an ism every day is kind of losing traction for me. It's not making a lot of difference, or it's not doesn't have its meaning anymore. It used to be fun and something I was looking forward to. I guess because I had some isms I wanted to explain. It's not to say that there aren't isms out there that are better or more fun or even as fun as the other ones I've done in the past. And I might come back to it, but for now I have a ton of reading to do because I've been wanting to do this research paper and I just haven't been doing it. I've been sort of I've been sort of skipping on the surface in terms of the topic, and it's partly because I don't have a topic that I really want to discuss, but I know it has something to do with homosexuality and secularism or atheism, so it's something in that realm, and I've sort of been sussing it out, kind of been not sussing it out really, but kind of feeling it out, kind of trying to get a like a place to rest the topic on, but some things are becoming apparent, which kind of brings me to this video. I'd like to say that any laws that a country enacts, or any sort of change in behavior of its citizens, there needs to be a real cultural shift before that change is actually effected. Before then, you end up with basically, in a lot of ways, still a very what you end up creating is somewhat of a lawless society, because then everybody's breaking the law that you just created. And I think the laws don't really as massively affect people's attitudes and behaviors as much as people's attitudes and behaviors affect the law. Now, it's a fuzzy area, and I'm sure you already know that, but I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about. In my initial sort of, feeling out of what I wanted to talk about, I came across Brazil, and Brazil's a pretty progressive country. It's a very, in terms of its laws, it's very progressive. There's same-sex marriage there. There's apparently virtually no racism, because everybody's sort of the same race, etc., etc. But apparently, it's a pretty homogenous population, by comparison anyway, and they have same-sex marriage there, but they're also a very religious country. And interestingly enough, there was a news article in The Advocate that talked about Brazil having it was about Ellen Page visiting Brazil with her friend and talking to a homophobe there, who happens to be the most famous homophobe in Brazil. I forget his name. But they were talking about Brazil having the highest murder rate in the world when it comes to LGBT people. So it's an example where people aren't necessarily tied to the law of the nation based on and they base that on their own personal cultural, I should say personal, but I said personal, but maybe cultural. There's a cultural understanding of what is right and wrong that affects people's behaviors and even affects the criminality. Quite frankly, I mean, yeah, we're talking murder here, right? Like, we're talking murder. So, I'm sure there's a lot of details I could go into, and like I said, my topic is getting clearer and clearer. I think, I started off as wanting to talk about homosexuality and atheism, and then, kind of moved away from that and came back to it. But it's kind of, that topic, as general as it seems, is kind of showing its head every now and again. Then, as another example, there was from The Advocate again. There was a Wyoming man that committed suicide after years and years of bullying by his peers and his neighbors, and his car got vandalized, etc., etc. He talked about it on YouTube, and he finally killed himself. So we're talking loss of life. I think that's the one thing I'm trying to get across. It's basically loss of life. and I'm sure different states think very differently, but I mean, the U.S. just recently, passed same-sex marriage, and that was a federal ruling. So, it goes to show that strange things do still happen. People still have herd mentalities, and they still have extreme conservatism and extreme bigotry when it comes to law and what is actually legal and or not. Like, forget even like understanding, forget even like acceptance or tolerance of LGBT people. We're talking murder, my friend, and not just murder, but suicide, loss of behavior, loss of human life. We're talking bullying, discrimination. We're talking, a slew of just very odd behaviors. Like, I mean, in light of the law. So forget tolerance, like, tolerating LGBT people. We're talking loss of life. So, and obviously in the case of the Wyoming man, like, just bullying and harassment. So, they say harassment is the hardest crime to prove, though. So, I mean, in this case, his car was vandalized, so he had that to show for it, right? So, I don't mean to, make light of any of this. It's not just a research topic for me. I've lived through. I wouldn't call it bullying. I wouldn't call it. I'm sort of one of the lucky ones. I have lived through, a lot of self-denial, a lot of shame for being homosexual. Never had anything really bad happen to me for it, but it's still one of those things with it's self-denial and things like that. So it is stringing along on the LGBT thing, but really I think the issue here is loss of life. But let's move away from the LGBT thing and think about like just odd behaviors, herd mentality, mob mentality. Like, I mean, we've all seen this morning, I think, when we woke up to the news, or basically the violence at some of those Trump rallies, or at that Trump rally anyway. What do people think? Like, I mean, how does this look on the Republican Party? Like, I mean, how does that look? Like, do people even think anymore? I mean, like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, God, it just feels so wrong. But and this is the guy that's going to be the next president of the United States, right? Like, this is what he inspires, and this guy's going to be the next president of the most powerful country on the planet Earth. Good luck. Good luck.